So help me piece this all together. So it sounds like there is definitely a dynamic of things going on. One, you have this incredible ecosystem that is amazing and provides a lot of things, like a lot of things that we need. It can support coconuts, it can support biodiversity, it can support spices, all the stuff that we love, and includes underground markets as well. You know, the poaching, the illegal pet trade industry, all those kinds of things, and maybe a lack of opportunity in other ways, shapes, or form that might be more of a sustainable livelihood. So then let's get more to the solution side. Maybe, I guess, when did you realize and notice these problems, and how did you decide to become a solution to what you were seeing around you in this beautiful space?
Yeah, um, that was a process of learning. And, we had this incredible opportunity. When I say we, my partner Luke and I have been doing this together. So we landed as these youths really in Aceh after the tsunami. And there was a $7 billion aid effort of all of these international organizations around the world. And so we got a very good feel for the donor funded sector, the NGO, and had the opportunity to really learn and to go deep. I worked for an organization called Fauna and Flora International and did a lot of work on Indigenous people's rights, supporting communities to access forest resources, to get rights to their forests and natural resources, and learned so much by living and working in communities in these parts of the world. And that expanded into working more internationally on conservation projects and also into the world of carbon markets and where sort of business met conservation. One thing that we experienced by working in the donor world, and really what I see looking back in Aceh and something that I'm really challenged by, was the short-term donor funding cycles and these big projects that had a limited time span, and then the work really just did not continue. And that really was the case for a lot of work in Aceh. Yes, there was some incredible work done, but for the conservation work in particular, it could only go so far. And the opportunity to work in the early days of some of the carbon projects when there was investment coming into conservation organizations, it really opened my eyes and showed to me the opportunities around business and conservation working together. So I worked for some time with Fauna and Flora International and Macquarie Bank, who had raised investment capital to develop a number of commercially financed projects around the world that were focused on conservation. And we had flexible funding. For the first time, if something didn't make sense, we just had a meeting about it and we redirected that finance. If we needed some additional funding and it was justifiable, that was a simple conversation. And that doesn't really happen in the donor community. And it's common sense if you're involved in business. But in the donor world, the restrictions on funding and requesting money and then having to spend it on this, sometimes, it's very limiting and actually can have negative impacts. So there was a need to blend this in some way and to take the good aspects and all of the incredible impactful work that conservation organizations and other NGOs do, but how to work this alongside having an economic engine, really needing to scale, being part of an economy, employing people. And so, those were challenges as well as opportunities that we experienced and learned from and took to the work that we're doing now.
So is this when Ecosystem Impact was born?
Yeah, we actually founded two organizations alongside of each other. So Ecosystem Impact is a foundation that was set up to really focus on the sort of work that a more traditional conservation organization might do. we also established a company at the same time, and they sit alongside each other. They share a vision and a mission, but they do different things. They play different roles in that area. So the company is called āluān. Company works with smallholder farmers in the coconut sector, and we've actually built a processing facility or a factory out on the island of Sumatra where we work. So yeah, one island actually, one landscape, and these two organizations were founded at the same time and work alongside each other.
That's definitely go way deeper into this because I love this concept and I hope that it happens more and more and becomes more of a thing. Like my current organization, we started a foundation a couple years ago, and its main one of its main funders, I guess you can say, is the for-profit side. It's so every single person that goes on one of our safaris around the world, a portion of the trip, it goes to the foundation, and then people can also donate to it as well. And then when I worked for another conservation travel company, they were the exclusive travel partners of the World Wildlife Fund, WWF, and a big chunk of the revenue that they made every single year went directly to WWF, and the travelers also donated to them. So I've seen firsthand the amazingness that can happen when you partner a for-profit and a nonprofit. And because I was previously only in the nonprofit world, and I think we're kind of not brainwashed, but kind of to think that the only way to do impact is if you're doing nonprofit work, and that if you're working for a for-profit, then they're just capitalist assholes, which is not true. When you have a good business model, you can actually fund conservation, and then you don't have to worry about these crazy funding cycles and asking donors all the time and blah, 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 blah. So that is another reason why I wanted to talk to you deep about this, because it's a growing thing and you have a perfect example of how you can put the two together and they both reach the same mission of conserving this beautiful landscape. So let's dive into this more. So maybe let's talk about the conservation side a little bit more. So what all does ecosystem impact do from, like you said, like the normal classic conservation side? Like tell me about your ranger program. Like how do you involve local communities, the wildlife, like all those kinds of things? Let's start there.
Yeah. So we are mostly the local community. We have, I think, 65 employees now, and 60 of those are from the islands.
That's a lot.
And then the other staff are mostly from other places in Indonesia. So we are based on the island. We're registered on the island, and our staff are from the island, and that's really important for us. Most of the staff are community rangers, and those are women and men from the local community who are trained to protect critically endangered animals from extinction. And in our landscape, that is the sea turtles and songbirds. It's mostly been focused on sea turtles to date. And so the incredible community rangers are living full-time in these remote islands, and they're patrolling the beaches and collecting data morning and night. And yeah, protecting these sea turtle eggs on Mankaru Island, for example. There's this piece of beach where sea turtles nest every single night of the year. And it's only because of these rangers that hatchlings are making their way to the ocean every morning of the year. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any. And before we were involved, around about 6 years ago, the inconsistent funding to the program meant that there were sometimes rangers on the island and sometimes not. And whenever they weren't there, everybody would just come and pillage. But since we've been there, there have been patrols morning and night, 365 days a year. So it's really just about being a consistent presence, and that's really important to work with the community. At the end of the day, it's their resource, that the custodians, and it's important that they're benefiting from any of the actual conservation work or funding that's coming into that area.
Let's go back to the ranger program and the local community that you have involved. It sounds like you mentioned too that you also are working with women in the area. So how has that gone? How have you been able to involve women in this awesome project that you're doing?
Yeah, so to date, most of our rangers, the community rangers, have been men. And Ecosystem Impact, the foundation, it's been interesting, but the rangers, and even if you think of that word ranger, what conjures up in your mind often is a man patrolling. And that really is the case where we are. And I think out of sort of 40 rangers, 39 of them are men, and we've only just started employing women. So it's a real focus of us, of our work now. In the islands that we work, it's Indonesia's only province where there's Sharia law, and there's often a perception that it's not appropriate work for women to be involved in this. But it's interesting if you delve a little deeper and you speak with women directly that there's actually a lot of passion and interest to be involved. So it's very important for us that we're involving women in mid-level management and that women are involved in making the decisions in the organization. So a lot of my work is focused on building a team and ensuring that that team is inclusive. And that really means that women are involved in decision-making roles in the organization, because without that, very, very different decisions are made, and it flows down to the structure of our teams. And so that's actually been a real challenge. It's been a challenge for me personally because I've been bringing up two children at the same time, and so I've not been able to play a day-to-day operational role that I might otherwise be able to play. So I've really had to focus on where I place my attention. And over time, I've realized that that is really building the team and having the right woman involved that would represent the voice that perhaps on a day-to-day basis I'm not able to bring.
So let's switch now to āluān. I would love to learn more about, because it seems like this is, from what I understand, this is really your bread and butter. This is like what you work on a lot. So tell me about that. Maybe how did the idea for you've given me a little seeds, but maybe put it all together. How did āluān come together, and how does the organization work? Like what is the day to day? Like how do you meet your farmers? What's the big goal? Yeah, just tell me everything āluān.
Yeah, so I mean, in some ways, the Ecosystem Impact, the foundation, it's an amazing organization and very impactful. But it's also, like many other conservation organizations, it's raising money in its present state from donors, and it's implementing quite traditional conservation work. There are other organizations that are similar. āluān is extremely challenging. We are implementing a company, a business. We are raising international investment finance, and we're investing it into a remote island landscape in Indonesia off the coast of Sumatra. Low down on the investment, the recommended investment list globally, and certainly low down on the IMS investment index. And we're doing this because we are adding value at origin in the landscape that we work, because it is core to our conservation mission. So if we think about what that macro threat is from a conservation perspective in the landscape, it is conversion of these coconut farms to palm oil, and then further conversion into forest areas. So as palm oil companies really get a hold, we will see conversion of, say, 5,000 hectares of coconut plantations and then into the forest areas. So macro conservation threats, palm oil, yes, as a conservation organization, we could protest, we could lobby, and that's important work. But really what āluān is doing is investing in the landscape, investing in coconut farmers and producing at origin so that our business has a positive economic impact and a positive environmental impact. And that's really key. That's where we're going to drive the transformative shifts. And then I mean, without the forest, without these resources, it's almost like it's a waste of time because there won't be any ecosystem for those songbirds to exist. So it's very important that they work together. Yes, the idea is that over time, āluān will be able to provide a sustainable finance stream, a little bit like we talk about with your tourism work. But the unique thing to understand is that āluān is doing conservation work, and it's driving that shift in the landscape from an economic perspective. And that is why business is really important. And business aligned with conservation is where we're going to see these shifts. And so that's the model that we are working on. It is not easy doing business in this part of the world. We've never built a business before. And we're doing it in one of the most challenging places on the planet. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, kudos to you. Just like, wow, just the fact that you've taken this massive undertaking on. It's well, very few people, I'm sure very few people would have the courage or just the gumption to do what you're doing. So maybe tell me a little bit more. What is it exactly that you're doing? Are you like buying coconut oil from farmers and then producing it and then selling it to a market, or replanting? Is it all of the above? So what is it exactly that you do?
Yeah, so we work with 500 farmers. They're smallholder farmers, which means that they have between 1 and 3 hectares of coconut farms. We've supported the farmers with organic certification, and the farmers work with collectors and bring fresh fallen coconuts to our production facility. Our production facility employs 70 people, and they process those coconuts farm fresh from the brown coconut, the fibers left in the field, and they are opening it, shredding it, squeezing it, and then we use a centrifugal machine. Our coconut is very high quality and it's raw. So we keep the nutrients in, and then, so it's spun in the centrifuge machine and has a final stage filtration process. So that is all happening out on the island. We have built a fields facility, and we sell direct to buyers around the world. So Lush Cosmetics is one of our foundational buyers, and they've been an absolutely incredible partner. And at the moment, we're setting up a number of distributors globally to support the sales and distribution side of what we're doing. We have been at a relatively small scale and not at a break-even point, but we've just scaled up our production, and so we're expanding those sales networks at the moment.